when we began this campaign, nobody really thought it would go very far because many of the pundits were saying, who in America supports the idea of a political revolution? Well, it looks like a few people in Morgantown do. A rigged economy is when over the last many decades, the North American Free Trade Agreement and other trade agreements has caused the state of West Virginia thousands of decent paying jobs. And what we are telling corporate America is we're sick and tired of seeing manufacturing plants shut down in America, sent to Mexico or China. And if they want us to buy their damn products, they better build those products here in America. When we talk about public education, it must be making public colleges and universities tuition free. But it is not just making public colleges and universities tuition free. We have a twin problem. And that is that there are millions of Americans today who are being suffocated and crushed by very high levels of student debt. Anybody here with student debt? Okay. Well, welcome to the club. There are, I believe, over 3 million people in this country with student debt. After Wall Street's greed and recklessness and illegal behavior nearly destroyed our economy, you'll recall that Wall Street went begging Congress for a bailout. Well, against my vote, they got that bailout. But it seems to me now in 2016 that it is absolutely appropriate that we impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And that tax would more than pay for making public colleges and universities tuition free and substantially lowering student debt. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. That is why I have introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But when we talk about drugs, there is another very, very serious issue in this country today. And I was just down in McDowell County, in the southern part of your state. And I have been to Baltimore, and this is a problem in my state. It is a problem in New Hampshire. We are facing a major opiate and heroin addiction crisis. When people are facing addiction and they want to get off the drugs, when people are facing mental health crises, they need treatment today, not 6 months from now. Let me take a moment to talk about some of the differences that exist between my Democratic opponent, Secretary Hillary Clinton, and myself. One of the major differences is how we raise the funding we need to run for office. Sadly, and we're going to change this, but sadly the reality is now it takes many, many hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, to run a serious national campaign for president. And what we said to the middle class and working families of this country is, look, if you want a candidate who is going to stand with you, who is prepared to take on the 1% and the powerful special interest, we need your help. And then what happened was absolutely mind-blowing. It is something in a million years I never would have dreamed could happen. And that is, over the last year, we have received 7.3 million individual contributions. That is more individual campaign contributions than any candidate in the history of the United States of America at this point in time. The most important foreign policy decision made in this country in our modern history dealt with the war in Iraq. I listened very carefully to what President Bush and Dick Cheney and all the rest had to say about Iraq. I listened, and I knew how important that vote was, because I knew that there would be kids in my own state and in West Virginia who would go off to war and would not come home if we invaded Iraq. I listened carefully, and I did not believe what they were saying. I not only voted against that war, I led the opposition, helped lead the opposition. Now, that was my view. That was not Secretary Clinton's view. She was then a senator from New York. She voted for that war. And let me say something, because I know that West Virginia has a proud military history. Let me say this, and I speak as the former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. We have a moral obligation to make sure that every veteran who has served our country gets the health care and the other benefits that they have earned. I was in Flint, Michigan a couple of months ago. You all know the tragedy of Flint, where children are suffering cognitive damage because of the lead in the water that they were drinking. But it is not just Flint, Michigan that has a drinking water problem. There are hundreds of communities all over this country, including in West Virginia, that are struggling with clean drinking water. But it's not just water. It is antiquated wastewater plants. It is roads and bridges. You got thousands of bridges in West Virginia. We have many in Vermont that are in desperate need of repair. In Vermont, we got potholes. People go over them. They disappear for weeks. And I understand you have some road problems here as well. I think when we have communities all over this country suffering from very high unemployment rates, when we have an infrastructure which is crumbling, I think we do away with a corporate tax loophole that allows corporations to stash their money in the Cayman Islands, not pay a nickel in federal taxes. I think we do away with that loophole, take that $100 billion a year invested in our infrastructure, create 13 million good-paying jobs over 5 years. We have, as custodians of this earth, a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our kids and future generations. Now, I know that you know that as we transform our energy system, there are people who will be hurt in that transformation. Our job is to make sure that we protect those workers who, through no fault of their own, are in that position. And that is why in the climate change legislation that I have introduced, the most sweeping climate change legislation in the history of the Senate, we have $41 billion directed to help those workers who are dislocated as a result of the energy transformation. If we stand together, and if we don't allow the Trumps of the world to divide us up, if we don't let them divide us up as to whether we are Mexicans or Muslims or women or men or gay or straight or born in America or born someplace else, if we stand together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish.